All right, let's start with the paper itself. So this is a very light staining. Sometimes it doesn't stain at all. I love how it gets this watery kind of look where parts of the paper will stain and then parts of it won't. I use a very inexpensive sketchbook paper, and here is the tablet that I use. It's Canson, and the size is 18 by 24. And I buy these in the large tablets because I cut them down and use them for a lot of different things, but I'm especially enjoying the size here where I fold it in half, and I'll show you that in a second. And then I will show you how I fold them because I love getting this extra fold line that comes with the paper. So I cut the paper down to 12 by 18. And so each sheet in the tablet will get me 2 of these. And so what I do is I fold these, I fold them in half, and that's where I start. And they don't have to be super neat. And then I fold it in half again. So now I have that middle fold here. Then with the pages here, this is where this fold opens. That is the part you want on the outside. And so then I fold it like this. I get these like little sandwiches, if you will, that will go into the pot. And so the one that is folded on the outside, let me reiterate that. And the reason for this is it makes it easier when it's wet and you've already soaked it to then open it and lay it down. And so this is the part you want on the outside. And so I do 4 to 5 of these in a pot, and I'll show you that because I don't want to put too many in the pot at once because I really want them to get soaked. But this is what you'll end up with when you're finished. So let me show you what I use. I use imitation vanilla, and you can get this and the coffee and the cinnamon all very inexpensively at like the Dollar Tree. And then ground cinnamon and then instant coffee. You want to make sure it's instant coffee. And what you'll do is you want to really, for these kind of things, have a dedicated pot. And then in the pot, I normally fill the pot about halfway. It's a very big pot. And then I heat the water so the water is warm. And then I put in approximately 1 cup to 2 cups of the instant coffee. I don't measure the vanilla. I probably use maybe half a cup, maybe 1/4 cup. And then I just shake on the cinnamon. I don't use a lot of that. I don't really measure, so I can't give you exact measurements because everybody's pot's going to be different. The water amount's going to be different. The amount of coffee staining you want is going to be different. But a combination of these things really makes it smell nice when it's done. And once you've heated the pot, don't boil it. You just want it warm. Then you put the coffee in and you stir it up really good. And then I would set it to where it cools off quite a bit, because if you heat the paper up, you put the paper in the pot and the water is too hot, it reacts to the paper differently. And you start seeing these areas where it looks like the paper might start to wear away. I don't know the right word is that. It's just, it starts to degrade. And so you don't want the water to be too hot. We are not boiling this. We are just in a very lukewarm to cold, yes, you can use cold, pot. So once I have my mixture made and the pot's cooled down, I just keep adding more paper and using it while it's cold. It's just initially getting it warm enough to dissolve the coffee, and then use it after that as much as you need it. And if you're going to be working over a course of more than 1 day, I would just, I leave the pot on the stove for 1 day. And then if it's after that, I need to keep it on longer, I just put it in a jar or a pitcher and put it in the fridge and then put it back in the pot the next day to use it. So that's it. And that's all I do to fold the papers and get them ready. And then I'll show you next how I put them in the pot and work them, and then how I lay them out to dry. Once the water is warm or even hot, that's when I add the coffee, the instant coffee, because then it will mix with the water better. And then I let it cool before I add the paper. And of course, I'll also add some vanilla, and I'll also add some cinnamon. Now, I don't generally measure, I kind of wing it, but I'm usually figuring, depending on how much paper I'm going to do, probably somewhere around maybe 1 cup to 2 cups. Now, the vanilla is of course optional, but it really makes it smell nice. And again, I just kind of wing that a little bit too. I don't really measure that part. And then ground cinnamon is also optional. And I don't put too much of that in there, just a little bit. Whoop, that was actually too much. I'll probably take a little bit of that out. And then stir it well, and we're gonna let it cool off before we start adding our papers. And then once I have all those ingredients in, I just stir it well, and then I let it cool off. And the reason I don't add the paper into the pot while it's hot is that the paper starts to get really thin. It gets a little bit, it degrades the paper too much when the water is hot. And so I have found it's better to do it when the water is not hot. So after they're folded, I drop them into the pot and just kind of move them around a little bit. And then just press them down, flip them around a little bit. And for my pot, I only have it maybe halfway filled. And I do maybe about 5 of these at a time. And then you'll want to kind of time it based on your recipe of ingredients to see if your coffee is really strong. You might not need to keep it in quite as long. I do about 10 minutes, and that's perfect. Once they've gotten to the point where I'm ready to take them out, I use some tongs, and I'll put them in like a pie plate or a pizza pan, and then that way it's easier to carry it over to where I will be laying them out. That way I don't drip all over the floor. So a pizza pan, a plate, but the pie plate works great because it's got a lip on it, and so the liquid will drip out into that and not get all over the floor. Now, when you get to the unfolding part, just be really careful. When you open these up, I fold them in the way I fold them because I really like to have those folded wrinkles when it dries. Just gently open the paper up. And once you gently open it, just be really careful. And then you just place it down. Now, if you want a little extra on there, you can always kind of splatter a little bit more. And that's it. And then you just let it dry. And then depending on your environment or depending on where you're drying them and how wet they are, it might take, I don't know, a couple hours. Sometimes it doesn't even take that long for my paper because this paper is really, really thin. But that's how I actually will end up placing them down and then drying them up. Now there's different ways that you can lay these out. I use a drop cloth because I do so many at one time. And you can also use towels and place towels down maybe on a tabletop or whatever's convenient